Touted as the mother of all aviation deals, yes, Tata's Air India is all set to counter the global dominance of Gulf and European carriers in the international skies. Hello and a very warm welcome to World 360. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. The war in Ukraine is all set to complete 1 year with no resolution in sight, while the race to the White House is heating up in the United States. We'll bring you our top stories in just a bit, but first the headlines. India gears up to take on European and Gulf carriers in the international market with Air India's order of 470 aircraft worth $80 billion. The deal with Airbus and Boeing is the biggest in aviation history. As the war in Ukraine nears the one-year milestone, CNN News18 reports from Kiev. This as Russia prepares for a new spring offensive and a victory for the strategic town of Bakhmut. Ukraine demands more weapons as world powers meet at the Munich Security Conference. CNN News 18 continues to report relentlessly from Turkey as the earthquake's death toll crosses 45,000. India lauded for its show of solidarity, Operation Dost. And announcing her US presidential bid for 2024, Nikki Haley calls for a new generation of leadership, stirring up the age debate. Suggests Trump and Biden are too old. As I was informing you earlier, Air India has scripted aviation history with its $80 billion deal with France's Airbus and America's Boeing. Aviation experts have called the mega deal a game changer for the global airline industry. Here's why. Democracy, demand, and demography. This is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 3D formula. One that's a hit with the West, especially when it means business. Air India's deal is the largest ever aircraft order in the history of global aviation. And secret negotiations in London led to this gigantic order of 470 jets. The provisional deals include 220 planes from Boeing and 250 from Airbus. The Airbus order includes 210 A320 neo narrow-body planes and 40 A350 wide-body aircraft to fly ultra-long routes. Boeing will supply 190 737 MAX, 20 of its 787 Dreamliners and 10 mini-jumbo 777X. The first aircraft to arrive will be 25 brand-new Boeing 737 MAX planes and 6 Airbus A350s. They arrive in the second half of 2023. Moreover, deliveries will ramp up in 2025 and beyond. Air India has split its orders between the American and French rivals, Boeing and Airbus, only underscoring the significance of Indo-US and Indo-French ties. The US President welcomed the historic deal in a phone call with Prime Minister Modi. Biden said that the deal will provide over 1 million American jobs across 44 US states. And here's what French President Emmanuel Macron had to say.
The first one is that Airbus is contributing to the outstanding development of India. And the new 250 aircrafts, which will be delivered to Air India, will be one more step in this direction.
निकट भविष्य में भारत एविएशन सेक्टर में विश्व का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा मार्केट बनने जा रहा है। भारत की मेक इन इंडिया, मेक फॉर द वर्ल्ड विजन के तहत एरोस्पेस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में अनेक नए अवसर खुल रहे हैं।
The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has also extolled India, that for creating employment opportunities in the UK. After all, the bigger planes will be powered by Britain's Rolls-Royce. But what stands out is this: a country once colonized by the British Empire, now thanked for generating employment. Ironically, by the Prime Minister of Britain, Rishi Sunak, also a man of Indian descent. But India's moment of recognition goes beyond history settling scores. China's international aviation industry is still struggling to recover post-pandemic. On the contrary, India's aviation is on a high growth path. So much so, the newly sealed deal is set to turn Air India into a global carrier, one that aspires to counter the dominance of Gulf carriers, Emirates, Qatar Airways, Etihad and others. Moreover, there's a possibility of aircraft parts being manufactured in India. And with that, expect more jobs in the country. Also, a definite boost to domestic manufacturing. For India, sky is the limit, quite literally. Bureau Report, CNN News 18. And with that, we shift our attention over to the war in Ukraine. It's been almost 1 year since Russia began its war in Ukraine. Here's a look at some recent developments this week. Russia launched another deadly round of shelling in Ukraine on Friday, killing 5 in the eastern Donetsk region and 3 in the southern Kherson region. Earlier in the week, Ukrainian officials claimed that they shot down most of the half a dozen Russian balloons over the capital of Kiev. Meanwhile, there's been no end to the war, which is now about to reach a 1-year milestone. And NATO allies are worried about decreasing ammo supplies in Ukraine's inventory. All this as Ukraine has urged world powers for more military aid at the ongoing Munich Security Conference. And CNN News 18's Sanjay Suri is in Kiev. We bring you his ground report.
You know, Akanksha, this is the last thing Ukraine needs now, and the first thing that matters. Ukraine is running steadily short of ammunition, and it's not just depleting the existing stocks, but as Stoltenberg said, Ukraine is running out of ammunition many times faster than it can be produced in the NATO countries supplying it. And already Ukrainian commanders are learning to be miserly in the use of ammunition, not what they want, certainly not what Ukraine wants. And this really could be the Russian tactic, through one attack after another to reduce the ammunition stocks in Ukraine and then to launch a big offensive and really to overwhelm defense with mass. And that has been the Russian tactic both in the First and the Second World Wars. This is now a race against time, and quite conceivably Russia could launch a major attack on ammunition supply lines to Ukraine. In Bakhmut, the problem is immediate and urgent. This has become a symbolic standing point for the Ukrainian army. Zelensky visited it a day before going to the US. It is now surrounded on 3 sides by the Russians, and if the Ukrainians give it up or lose it, perhaps out of shortage of ammunition, that could then open the gates to a far more forceful Russian advance.
All right, as Sanjay was rightly pointing out, this is a race against time for Ukraine. Let's also break down where the war stands for Ukraine and for Russia. And for that, I'm joined in by Ukrainian political expert Ruslan Botnik, who's joining me live from Kiev. Thank you so much, Ruslan, for joining me in on World 360. Now, the political debate in recent weeks, as we have seen, has focused mainly on tanks and air defense systems. But Ukraine faces another urgent problem, and that is a shortage of ammunition. Something also raised by the NATO Secretary General. Why is there a shortage, and what are its consequences?
Also, we are talking about the aircrafts for our army, but of course the main problem for nowadays is the shortages of ammunition, of artillery shells, because Ukraine uses for 2 weeks, the ammunition, artillery shells, which United States industry produced last year. We need only 2 weeks to use all the weapons which were produced in United States, for example, in 2021. So this war is so high, is so fragile, is so extremely escalated,
right,
that we need much more resources, shells, guns, and so on, than Western industry able to produce for Ukraine. Our post-Soviet resources, storages are almost exhausted, and nowadays we used more than 50%, more than half of our ammunition, Western calibers, Western weapons, but West is not ready to give for us enough this weapon.
All right. Ruslan, even as we speak, war rages on in Bakhmut. Why is Russia so determined to capture Bakhmut? And is Zelensky's order for aid groups to leave Bakhmut a prelude to a Ukrainian withdrawal?
It looks like Ukraine may lose this city and its neighborhood in the next few weeks, because its city almost surrounded by Russian forces. Only few roads to the west are still working for Ukrainian army, and it looks like we are preparing for the withdrawal from this city. It's an important city because it's a very important road tie in the east of Ukraine. This city connected more than 8 another big cities in the Donbass. And if Russia will capture this city, Russia will take a good chance to continue their offensive operation in few ways, in few roads, in the same time.
Right. Ruslan, now we've heard of the Russian spy balloons hovering over Ukraine, especially Kiev. Are the Russian spy balloons becoming Vladimir Putin's latest line of attack?
It's a new methods of war, which is concentrated for spreading, for exhausting our anti-rockets, anti-aircraft system. Russia spread this balance because in the radar, for anti-aircraft systems, this balance looks like a rocket or aircraft, and the Ukraine spends a lot of our anti-rocket system resources to break this balance.
Right.
They use it for exhaustion of our defense system before or during their rockets attack, during their bombs attack on Ukraine.
All right. Many thanks to you, Ruslan Botnik, for bringing us your precious insights on World 360. And with that, let's now shift our focus over to the annual Munich Security Council, which convened in Germany with political heads of over 40 nations participating this year. The council comes together nearly a year post the brutal war in Ukraine and has dominated this year's agenda of the Munich Security Conference as well. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky opened the annual Munich Security Conference with a fatigue warning against the war and said that time is of essence if the world wants to see an end to the prolonged conflict. And President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz also stressed on the global economic damage from this war and the need for world leaders to expedite its end. And with that, let me bring you the latest on the death toll from the Turkey and Syria earthquake. Both Turkey and Syria have faced mass devastation after a 7.8 magnitude earthquake hit the two nations on 6th of February. Residential buildings, railway tracks, roads, schools, offices, monuments and more were reduced to rubble, with thousands buried under the debris. What's followed since are frantic rescue efforts to save those who survived, but the death toll has crossed 45,000. On Thursday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced an appeal for $1 billion in aid towards earthquake relief efforts in Turkey over the course of 3 months. A 45-year-old man in Turkey was recently rescued after spending nearly 250 hours under the rubble.
In Antakya province, you can see this is a road which goes to the main city of Antakya, and this road is completely destructed. This road is completely devastated. In fact, you can see the concrete structure has come up, and from this side the road is entirely broken.
We are in Nure Dagi, one of the worst affected areas post the earthquake, and in fact behind me also there is this stretch which is completely devastated. What are the real problems, and what help you need from country like India and other countries? What help we should send for you people?
Firstly, thanks for everything to come here and help for us. And our government mostly help about everything, about accommodation, food and some clothes. We don't need any food, any clothes, but mostly problem in here, containers and about some home.
Remember, CNN News 18 continues to relentlessly report from ground zero in Turkey. And with that, I shift focus over to the United States. It's official. Nikki Haley will run for the 2024 Republican nomination. Haley's candidacy announcement for U.S. President makes her the first major challenger to former U.S. President Donald Trump in a GOP primary election. Many believe that Haley is everything that the GOP needs at the moment, to being a woman, a young game changer who also happens to be a daughter of Indian immigrants. In fact, in her announcement video, Haley refers to the need for generational change and time for a new leadership. And that's, of course, a direct jibe not just at the current US President Joe Biden, but former too. And I'm talking about Donald Trump. Haley will likely face stiff competition in this lane from other potential GOP candidates, such as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former Vice President Mike Pence, and former Secretary of State of the United States, Mike Pompeo, who are all set to be weighing in on 2024 presidential runs.
I'm so glad to be with the people I love, in the state I love, to talk about saving the country I love. I have always had a deep belief in America. But I know America is better than all the division and distractions that we have today. And I'm confident that the American people agree. We're ready to move past the stale ideas and faded names of the past. And we are more than ready for a new generation to lead us into the future.
So what will Nikki Haley's entry to the White House race mean? Let's break it down for you. And for that, my guest today is Orlando Sanchez, who's a Republican strategist and is joining me live from the United States. Thank you, Orlando, for joining in. Now, Nikki Haley calls out the racism in America and the bullies, and also underscores the need for a new generation of leadership in her campaign ad. How impactful, in your view, is Nikki Haley's entry to the race, and what could be the factors working in her favor?
Well, she is appealing to a younger generation, and she has to be careful because remember that she will be in a primary for the nomination by the Republicans that vote in the primaries. And generally, that is an older voting population.
All right.
The young generation does not really participate heavily in the primaries. So it's a little questionable for Nikki.
That's an interesting point made by you, Orlando. Having said that, many liberals and a certain section of the American press have attacked Nikki Haley for her consistent U-turns from being a vocal Trump critic to being a supporter and now back to locking horns with Donald Trump. Could this perception make her seem less reliable as a potential candidate for the U.S. president?
Yes, remember, Nikki was elected as a governor of an important state in the United States. She has served the former President Trump very well as an ambassador. And now she obviously has substantial support among large Republican contributors. So, yes, she will be a formidable candidate.
All right. Orlando, a YouGov survey has found out that Nikki Haley's presidential run would split the votes for Ron DeSantis and hand Donald Trump a victory. How do you assess on that possibility?
Well, that is a very good observation. Donald Trump still commands a large lead in many polls among Republican primary voters. They're not going to leave Donald Trump. They remember the 4 years of good economic times, good international relations, although it started off rocky. He did have some international relations, and there was general peace during his administration. So there is a possibility that Governor Ron DeSantis and former Governor Nikki Haley will split the vote of those that are not supporting Donald Trump.
All right. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Orlando Sanchez, as always. And with that, it's time to slip into a quick break. But don't go anywhere, because global news and updates await your attention on World 360.